My family treated me like trash my entire childhood because I wasn't really theirs. But years later, when they lost everything, they came crawling back begging at my door. I'm Daniel, 29M, and for as long as I can remember, I was the outsider in my own home. Technically, I wasn't adopted, more like taken in. My mom had me before she met the man I grew up calling Dad. He never wanted me. He made that clear from the moment I was old enough to understand words. To him, I wasn't his blood. When my half-siblings were born, two golden children, perfect in their eyes, the difference became impossible to ignore. They got birthday parties, gifts, vacations. Me? I got hand-me-downs and the constant reminder that I was lucky to even have a roof over my head. Anytime money was tight, I was the first to be sacrificed. Sports? Couldn't afford it for me. New shoes? Maybe next year. Meanwhile, my siblings walked around in the latest gear, bragging about what mom and dad had bought them. But what cut deepest wasn't the material stuff. It was the way they spoke to me. My father, the man who raised me, once told me straight to my face, "Don't forget, Daniel, you're not my responsibility. You're just here because of your mother." That stuck with me, burned into me. By the time I was a teenager, I had already decided I was going to get out of that house, out of that toxic cycle. I studied harder, worked part-time jobs, saved every penny. When I turned 18, I packed my things in a single bag and left for good. I swore to myself I would never crawl back. And I didn't. In fact, I did the opposite. I built a life. College, a stable career, my own apartment. Slowly, brick by brick, I created the family I never had, not by blood, but by choice. Friends who respected me. Colleagues who valued me. I was no longer the unwanted kid. But life has a strange sense of humor. Because just when I thought I had finally left my old life behind, a knock came at my door one evening. And standing there were the very people who had spent years reminding me I was nothing to them. I'll never forget the sound of that knock. Firm, impatient, like they still owned a piece of me. When I opened the door, there stood my family. My mother, looking tired and worn down. My so-called father, eyes bloodshot, still carrying that same cold glare he'd used on me since childhood. And behind them, my siblings, now grown, but still dressed like the world revolved around them. For a moment, I just stared. I hadn't seen them in years. My stomach twisted like I was 16 again, waiting to be blamed for something I didn't do. "Daniel?" my mother said softly, almost like she wanted me to forget the past. "We need to talk." I didn't move. "What are you doing here?" My father grunted. "This isn't the welcome we expected." As if I owed him one. That's when my brother stepped forward. He used to shove me into walls for fun when we were kids. Now he looked nervous, shifting from foot to foot. "We're in trouble," he said. Trouble. That was an understatement. Turns out, the Golden family had struck gold one too many times. Credit cards maxed out, loans unpaid, investments gone bad. They were drowning in debt, one bad decision after another. And now, collectors were circling. "We thought maybe you could help," my sister chimed in. "You've done well for yourself, right?" I almost laughed. Me, the unwanted child. Their last resort? My father cut in, voice sharp. "Don't act like you don't owe us something. We gave you a home, food, a roof over your head. The least you can do is step up now." The words hit me like a brick. Not because they hurt anymore, but because they were so predictable. They hadn't changed. Not one bit. They still saw me as the outsider, the afterthought, the one who should be grateful. But what they didn't realize was this. I wasn't that scared kid anymore. And for once in my life, I had the power. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, letting them squirm in the silence. It was strange. For years I had dreamed of moments like this, of standing face to face with them when they finally realized I wasn't worthless. Now it was here and it felt almost surreal. "You need help," I finally said. Funny, because when I needed help, you were nowhere to be found. My mother's eyes dropped. My father scoffed. "That was different. You were a kid. Kids don't get everything they want." "No," I said evenly. "Just your kids. The ones you actually cared about." My siblings shifted uncomfortably. They weren't used to hearing me talk back. I was always the quiet one, the scapegoat, the one who swallowed every insult. "Not anymore." My sister spoke up. "Daniel, please. This isn't the time to rehash the past. We're desperate. We could lose the house." "We could." I cut her off with a laugh. "The house? You mean the one I wasn't even allowed to call mine?" The one I used to get sent outside of whenever you didn't want me around. My father's face reddened. Enough. You're going to help us. That's what family does. That word, family, made something snap in me. Family? I repeated. Family doesn't treat a kid like trash because his blood isn't good enough. Family doesn't remind him every day that he's not wanted. You didn't raise me. You tolerated me. And now, suddenly, I'm family when you need a bailout. The silence after that was deafening. For once, they had no snappy comeback. No dismissal to shut me down. I could see it in their eyes. They weren't here out of love. They were here because they had no one else left. And as I looked at their desperate faces, I realized something powerful. The balance had shifted. They needed me, and I was going to make them feel every ounce of the humiliation they had poured into me for years. I could have slammed the door in their faces right then. Part of me wanted to, but another part, the part that remembered every slight, every insult, every night I cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't good enough, wanted more than a simple no. I wanted them to feel what it was like to be powerless. So I stepped aside. Fine, come in. They shuffled past me like they still owned the place, though I noticed the hesitation in their steps. My father looked around at my apartment. Clean, modern, filled with things I had bought myself. He muttered under his breath. Not bad for someone who started with nothing. That line was supposed to sting, but instead it fueled me. Yes, I had started with nothing, and yet here I was, standing taller than any of them. We sat down in the living room. My siblings looked at me like I was their savior. My mother fiddled with her hands. My father spoke first because of course he did. We need money, he said bluntly. The banks are circling us. Collectors won't leave us alone. If you could just cover a few payments, buy us some time. I raised a hand. Stop. All eyes turned to me. For the first time, I was the one setting the rules. You want help? You'll get it on my terms. No guilt trips. No lectures about what I owe you. If I choose to do anything, it'll be because I decide, not because you demand it. My father bristled. He wasn't used to being challenged. Don't get cocky, Daniel. You wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for us. I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp as a knife. No, I'm here in spite of you. The room went quiet. My siblings shifted uncomfortably. My mother sighed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. For once, I wasn't the kid begging for scraps of their affection. I was the one in control, and if they wanted me to save them, I was going to make sure they understood exactly who they were dealing with now. I let the silence hang in the room until it was almost unbearable. My siblings avoided my eyes, my mother stared at her lap, and my father kept shifting in his seat like he was about to explode. So, I finally said, leaning back casually, tell me exactly how bad it is. My brother cleared his throat. We're behind. On the mortgage, credit cards, some medical bills. It's piling up. How much? I asked. He hesitated. My sister jumped in. Around 80,000. But if we just get a little breathing room, we can fix things. I raised an eyebrow. 80,000? And you came here thinking I'd just write a check. My father slammed his hand on the table. Watch your tone. We didn't come here to be humiliated. We came here because you're in a position to help. That word again. Help. As if I owed them. I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. You know what's funny? When I was younger, all I ever wanted was help. Help affording soccer fees. Help buying school supplies. Help feeling like I mattered. But every time I asked, you told me there wasn't enough. Or that I didn't deserve it. My mother whispered, Daniel, please? But I kept going. And now here you are, begging me. The unwanted kid. The one you pushed aside for years. Tell me, do you feel as small as you made me feel? Do you feel invisible? Because that's exactly how you treated me. My sister's eyes filled with tears. My brother looked down at the floor. My father's face twisted with anger. But for once, he had no words. The power shift was intoxicating. For years, I had dreamed of saying these things, of watching them flinch under the weight of their own hypocrisy. And now, here they were, desperate enough to sit in my apartment, begging for scraps from the child they once discarded. I wasn't going to give them an answer yet. No, not yet. I wanted them to stew in their desperation a little longer. Because for once in my life, I was the one pulling the strings. I stood up slowly, letting the weight of the silence press down on them. My father's eyes narrowed like he thought I was about to throw them out. Instead, I walked over to the window, looked out at the city lights and said, "If I were to help, what would you be willing to do in return?" The question hung in the air. My brother blinked. "What do you mean?" "We'd pay you back." I turned, cutting him off. "No, I don't want money. If I help you, it won't be out of charity. It'll be because you're willing to finally admit what you did. To me, to the kid you made feel like he was worthless." My sister bit her lip, eyes watering. My mother whispered, "Daniel, please, this isn't necessary." But I pressed harder. "No, it is, because for 20 years I begged for your approval, for some sign that I was family, and you gave me nothing. Now you're sitting here asking me for a lifeline. So tell me, are you willing to swallow your pride long enough to admit the truth?" My father's jaw tightened. His pride wouldn't let him bend. "We don't owe you some ridiculous apology. You're exaggerating. You always were too sensitive." I laughed bitterly. Same old line. The same one they'd used to shut me down for years. But then something unexpected happened. My sister's voice broke through the tension. "He's right," she whispered. Everyone turned to her. Tears slid down her cheeks. "We treated you horribly, Daniel." "I did. I called you names. I made fun of you. I let Dad push you aside. And I never stood up for you. And now we're here, begging you for help. It's pathetic." My brother shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. My mother started crying softly. And for the first time, I saw cracks forming in the golden facade they'd always worn. But not my father. His pride was a wall of iron. He'd rather choke than admit he'd been wrong. That was fine. Because if he wouldn't break, I was going to make him watch as the rest of his family did. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about justice. I leaned back against the wall, arms folded, watching their faces shift under the weight of my words. My sister's confession had cracked the dam, but I wasn't done. "You think that little apology is enough?" I asked softly. "You think admitting it now erases years of making me feel like a stranger in my own home?" My sister shook her head quickly. "No, it doesn't. But it's the truth. And it's all I can give you now." My mother sobbed quietly into her hands. For once, she wasn't defending them. Maybe even she had finally run out of excuses. But my father, he sat stiff, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the villain. His silence was defiance, and I could feel his anger burning a hole through me. I walked closer, lowering my voice so it cut like a blade. "Say it. Say I wasn't just some burden. Say you treated me like garbage because I wasn't yours. Say it." He snapped his head up, eyes wild. "You want me to lie? Fine. You weren't mine. You'll never be mine. You were nothing but dead weight I was forced to carry because your mother couldn't keep her legs closed." The room froze. My mother gasped like she'd been stabbed. My siblings stared in shock. And me? For a second, I felt that old, familiar sting. The words I'd feared my whole life, said out loud at last. But instead of crushing me, they fueled me. I smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. "Thank you," I whispered. Finally, the truth. I turned to my siblings and my mother. "You hear that? That's how he always saw me. That's what he thought every time I asked for help. Every time I tried to be part of this family. And now you all know it, too." My sister covered her mouth, tears streaming. My brother muttered, "Dad, what the hell?" My mother looked broken, whispering, "I didn't know it was that bad. But I knew. I had always known. And now it was out in the open. The ugly truth laid bare for everyone to see. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about stripping away every illusion they had left. And I had just pulled the mask completely off." The room was suffocatingly quiet after my father's outburst. My sister sat frozen, sobbing silently. My brother looked away, unable to meet my eyes. My mother trembled in her seat, whispering prayers to no one. And me? I felt lighter, like I had carried a weight my whole life that finally slid off my shoulders. The truth was ugly, brutal, and long overdue. I took a deep breath and said, "Now you understand why I don't owe you anything. Not love, not forgiveness, and definitely not money." My father jumped up, pointing a finger at me. "You arrogant little. Sit down." I cut him off. My voice was calm but sharp enough to slice through steel. For the first time in my life, he actually listened. He sat, seething but silent. I paced slowly across the room. "You came here because you thought I'd roll over. Because that's who I used to be. The boy who took your abuse and kept quiet. But that boy is gone. I'm a man now. A man who built his own life without you. A man who doesn't need you. I stopped in front of them, my gaze steady. And you? You need me. My sister tried one last time. Daniel, please. If we lose the house, then you lose it, I said flatly. Maybe then you'll learn what it feels like to be discarded. To watch everything you rely on vanish. To have no safety net. My mother wept openly. My brother stared at the floor. And my father? He muttered. We'll figure it out without you. I leaned down, looking him dead in the eyes. No, you won't. Because for once, you don't have control. I do. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward. It was final. The balance of power had shifted forever. And I wasn't going back. They left my apartment that night in silence. No hugs, no promises to stay in touch, no half-hearted apologies. Just silence. My sister lingered at the door, her eyes red and swollen. But even she followed the others out eventually. When the door clicked shut, I stood there for a long time, staring at it. I thought I'd feel guilty, like I had just abandoned them the way they abandoned me. But the truth? I felt free. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. Within days, the whispers started. Extended family members called me, furious. How could you turn your back on them? They're family, they scolded. I didn't argue. I simply asked them one question. Where were you when I needed family? That usually ended the call. Word spread about my father's outburst, too. My sister, whether by accident or design, let slip what he had said about me. Suddenly, the golden family image they'd built for years began to crack. Relatives who once worshipped them began to distance themselves. Neighbors whispered. Even his old drinking buddies stopped calling. Meanwhile, I kept living my life. I went to work. I met friends. I slept soundly for the first time in years. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I was the outsider, the black sheep, the one who didn't belong. And now, they were the ones being cast out. I didn't need to lift a finger. Their own pride, their own arrogance was tearing them apart from the inside. And I realized something profound that night. I hadn't just dodged a bullet by leaving them behind. I had walked away from a firing squad. Months passed, and the calls stopped. No more banging on my door. No more guilt-tripping messages. My family's financial ruin played out without me. They lost the house, the cars, even the status they clung to so tightly. And me? I kept moving forward. My career grew, my friendships deepened, and for the first time in my life, I felt proud of the man staring back at me in the mirror. One evening, I walked past my old neighborhood out of curiosity. The house where I grew up stood empty, a faded for sale sign leaning in the yard. The windows were boarded, the garden overgrown. For a second, I remembered the boy who once cried himself to sleep inside those walls, begging for love he would never get. But I wasn't that boy anymore. I whispered under my breath, "You never broke me." Then I turned and walked away. The truth is, family isn't about blood. It isn't about obligation. It's about who shows up for you when you need them, who makes you feel like you belong. They never did that for me, but I learned to do it for myself. So when people ask me now if I regret not helping them, my answer is simple. No, they had their chance to be my family. And when they slammed that door years ago, they made their choice. I just made mine too.